Good evening, everybody. Just going to get everything set up. Okay. Greetings from Cincinnati, Ohio, everyone. This is Wayne Griffin with Always Reforming Weekly. This is a special segment that we will be adding into our weekly podcast. It's called Always Reforming Response. And we'll take this opportunity to do a more of a brief response to issues of the day that require a response, or that wherever God actually leads myself to feel strongly as if something needs a biblical response or a biblical defense. And that's what we're doing here today. So this will be episode 3 of Always Reforming Weekly, the podcast, and that will be added in. Episode 2 is being edited. We had some technical difficulties that were my fault in the beginning, so we have to re-record a portion of it. That'll be coming up next week, but the third episode should be airing today, later today. So the intent of today is to discuss the book by Megan Basham. It's gotten a lot of controversy. I've touched on it briefly on an initial response in an earlier video. You can go and find that. It's gotten quite the response and lots of comments, and it seems to be just an important topic, this book, and I agree that it is. Um, we are starting with, let's see here, the the first thing that we're going to talk about is kind of our agenda for this. I am in the process. I have purchased the official copy of the book, and I am greatly impressed with it. I encourage everybody to purchase the book. Um, let's see. Today we're going to discuss the our agenda, and so the agenda is um, right here before us. We're going to be discussing the scope and why, the controversy that's involved with this. Chapter 1 and the introduction. And the reason we're doing that is chapter 1, when Gavin Ortland responded and kind of started a kind of an onslaught of attacks and different people's opinions on the book. We're going to touch that first, and then we're going to go into the introduction, which I haven't seen many of the people responding to the introduction yet, which I think is really great. We're going to touch on that, which gives the purpose that Megan wrote the book, which is great for people to hear. And we're going to talk about the obvious problem in evangelicalism, which is the problem that Megan presents in the book, and also a great question of why you should read this book. So first of all, the introduction. So the scope and why. Why we're going over the first 2 chapters. The goal for this will be to kind of go through the book chapter by chapter and talk about certain things and finding things that really doing a review of the book, if we agree, if we disagree, and just taking a look and giving a fair response to that. Talking about the outrage, which was some of the responses from every sphere of spectrum that different responses to the book, and also there is a lot of support from really trusted people as well. So we'll be able to take a look at some of that. The context. The reason why is to provide context and create a fair assessment. So we're starting off with the beginning, the first 2 chapters of the book, essentially, and some encouragement not only for others to read the book, for Megan herself and her journalism. Starting off first with the controversy. So talking about this a little bit. We see here 2 videos by Dr. Gavin Ortland, and what he's doing is just responding to chapter 1. He was mentioned in just a few pages on when she's going into her book, talking about climate change and the love for the creation, and she talks about several things there. But what we're honing in on is on the response from Dr. Gavin Ortland, and that's created much of the controversy. I did a video on that, so My position is clear on his response and thinking that I agree with, for example, John Harris from Conversations That Matter, that Megan's assessment of Dr. Ortland and his video was fair, and that she was just giving summaries. So we're going to just go ahead and touch and look on what he said about this. And we're going to go ahead and listen to him.
And I could put a tweet out there real quick and then get to work. And there's so many things I wanted to do, I couldn't. And so I didn't know exactly what the complaints were about. I saw that there was this big thing about Gavin Ortland, but I was like, well, what is it exactly? He says Megan Basham misrepresented him, but how? And then I listened to his podcast and I thought, oh, that's why I didn't see anything that was really specific, because there really isn't anything that's that specific. Gavin Ortland is, well, we'll get into it. I don't want to jump ahead of things here, but it's more optics style feelings. I mean, I think he thinks that he has legitimate counterpoint, but when you look at what he says and what he tries to use to combat Megan's points about him, then you're just left thinking, okay, you don't like the fact, like, she's mean. That's basically it. Like, you feel like she was mean. She summarized your points. You don't like the summary. You don't like, you want to come off as more winsome, reasonable, third way. Let's just call it what it is. You want to come off as less political. And Megan pegged you for what you are. You're more political. You're more on the left on this issue. And that's the bottom line. And then some of the things that he was attributing, that she said about him, she didn't really say about him. She was making general statements about a posture that exists in evangelicalism. So he took things way too personally, in my opinion. But James Royals asks, Ortland's video made me much more nervous about the book. He definitely brought up fair points and misrepresentation.
I think that gives just a quick summary of his position, and that essentially the video that I posted just a couple of days before, John Harris, he agrees with what my assessment of the situation with Gavin and Megan. It's really her summarizing his points. There were quotes that she used from the video that is in question, and she tied those kind of catchphrases from Dr. Ortland and tied that into a summary of what she believes his overall points were. I don't think there's anything nefarious, and I stand on, I believe she gave a fair assessment, and others also share that same opinion. So back to the slides. As we've said, we think it was a fair assessment of Dr. Ortland. I believe he took this a little bit too personally, and definitely felt like an impersonal attack, and I think rightfully so. He does have a lot of left-leaning ideas. I would say his theology is definitely more liberal. He refers in that same video of he is definitely a old earth creationist or a theistic evolutionist. One of those two, when he references that the earth, something happening 50 million years ago. And so he ties into that kind of very left-leaning point of view, which is not something that I would recommend. When I was first introduced to Dr. Ortland, it was concerning the Roman Catholic Church, and here in Cincinnati we have a big presence, so it's something I'm passionate about helping people understand and hear the true gospel of Jesus Christ, and that salvation is by faith and faith alone. And so I wasn't really that familiar with Dr. Ortland's other more political views. And so now, as I really appreciated his approach in those things, I wouldn't recommend him to really anyone based on some of the more liberal views concerning creation, and which I think is in Genesis is a very clear creation account that because it's, the morning and evening came. God repeats this over and over and over, and that was one day. I don't think those can be eras and eons. We can get into the technical, the Hebrew and things such as that, but I think the classical plain reading of the text is very clear, and that's where my convictions stand. Moving forward, we have a little bit. That's kind of where I stand at this point. I think that Megan's work in this book is very solid. I think she gives good background. I think it's It's reasonable. I think that she gives her opinions at the correct time. I do think it is a journalism that is very supported with sources. There are one point of disagreement that I did have with her is that she refers to the Southern Baptist Convention at least more than one occasion, that that it is a denomination, and the Southern Baptist Convention is not a denomination. It is a convention of Southern Baptist churches, but it is not a denomination. Baptist is a denomination, and you could even say, but the Southern Baptist Convention, in and of itself, by definition, is not a denomination. So it is a convention of churches, like-minded, for the most part, churches that come together and that deliberate and have some kind of uh, internal political discussions and votes and missions agencies, things like that. But it is not technically a denomination. So I do believe, even though she's part of a Southern Baptist church, and I would say if you look up Dr. Vody, he's made some good statements about the Southern Baptist Convention being exactly that. It's a convention, not a denomination. So I would agree with her at that small point. And there are other small points that people see that she has been able to explain. If you go look, some of her responses are really good, where she says, "Okay, yeah, that could have been a mistake, but they're very minor, and they're not actually. They're more, I would consider, like red herrings that very few people seem to be talking about the actual issue of what the problem is with these left-leaning ideas and hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants and monies from clear atheists going into different evangelical agencies, and some of these woke and climate change and these different ideas that are seeping into. And that's the main purpose of why she's writing this work, and why it is important to understand, some of the people that leaders you may look up to or look into, that you need to kind of just observe for yourself and see where some of these ideas may be coming from. So, touching on the main purpose that Megan wrote this book, and it's found in the introduction, and I hope that everybody does take an opportunity to purchase this book. At $25, I could understand, or maybe you want to get a Kindle version, or wait a little bit. I'm more of the eBay, wait till the books go on considerable sale for like under $10. But this one was important, so I figured that I would get a copy. And I had planned to come up with a slide so you guys could see exactly what the quote is. But we're going to go ahead and see. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and just read it from the book. So we're on, it is Roman numerals 28, where she talks about her primary purpose here in the book. So I'm going to go ahead and read that for us here. And I apologize for not actually being able to officially transition this to you. This is what you're supposed to see. John Harris, very reputable. There's his movie. So if you heard the audio coming from him, I just want to make sure that that was something that you were able to hear. Maybe not. I do apologize. I am still new at working through all of this. It's kind of complicated, but it's a learning curve. So I apologize. And for anybody who does see this, pray for me. Thank you. So reading this, Megan's her purpose from the book. Let's go ahead. So she says, my ultimate purpose is to confirm for average evangelicals in the pews that the uneasy feelings many of you have been having, perhaps for some years now, that your pulpits and your institutions are being co-opted by political forces with explicitly secular progressive aims, are justified. That is indeed happening. Though one development that has cheered me immensely is to see how many of my fellow sheep have not, for the most part, wandered away with their shepherds. You are pushing it back against that which you know is not biblical. My prayer is that this book will arm you to do so to an even greater degree. So, her main purpose is for the average evangelical in the pew, to to arm you with information to help you stand firm and to recognize that any uneasiness, or if you're recognizing these secular ideas entering the church, that they are justified and that your convictions are accurate, and that to stand strong. And even she even goes on to perhaps even finding some of those faithful shepherds who may not have a big following or a big name, but going and finding and just submitting yourself to the local church and just serving God. So prayerfully considering those things, it is a great call for and a big aid to the church, and that's kind of what she's calling for. She also mentions on the next page, so what she's calling America to. This is in the introduction. She's saying she's not calling for completely just abandoning ship or just completely getting out of these realms, even though she touches on the SBC and many of those things. She's saying that she also adds here in the introduction, nor should we abandon the seminaries and colleges, Christian colleges, to liberals without a fight. These are the institutions training the majority of our nation's pastors and ministry leaders. I am not here to call for a leaderless church. We need pastors, deacons, and elders who exercise godly authority. Finally, while this book focuses on false and misguided shepherds, this country is still blessed with many, many good shepherds, many of whom are laboring in obscurity, as the Andersons did, which is the family she was talking about earlier in the beginning of it, that who had some issues moving to California, couldn't find a church, moved back to Atlanta, could not. Their former church had changed quite a bit with some of these new ideas and in these recent developments. And eventually they did find a local church. As the Andersons did, we must put in the effort to find them and become members of their bodies. And she was happy to report that the Anders did eventually find a church home where James is teaching Bible study classes. As we expose darkness, let it inspire us all the more to thank God for such good and faithful shepherds bringing his word to light. I thought that was really encouragement. And to further, we're talking about her a little bit of going back to here, her integrity, her work and integrity. I think it's important because this is not something we've heard. Actually, in excerpts from the book itself about kind of how she prefaces all this, what she's writing. So if you look this provides full context for what she was trying to do. So let's just talk about this. I believe that she's been very fair, and I think understanding the full context, reading the introduction and understanding that, and then kind of reading in light of what she's already laid down helps to really have a balanced view of her work. And so she says, thus, in this book, I will provide accounts of specific people, but my guidelines will be this. I will name names where the events are public or the comments were made on the record. I will not name names where the comments were not public or where they were made in the context of a personal conversation with an expectation of confidentiality. So any addresses that she does make or anything that she is addressing that has names named is because they are public figures and they do have a public platform, therefore calling them to a correction or reform or to get back on the correct path is acceptable, and it's the right thing to do. If you believe that people are straying or letting secular ideas influence them when they have a public platform, I believe it is biblical to call them to repentance and to consider a biblical way and reforming their lives around what God has spoken. So let's see. So she also says, it is also important to note that none of the pastors, theologians, or Christian influencers included in this book are associated with the political left, though they may have been pushing progressive ideologies. I don't bother with open liberals like Sojourner's Jim Wallace or MSNBC's Al Sharpton, as they are known Democratic operatives. They have little to no sway among theological conservatives or with the broad swath of mainstream evangelicalism. So this kind of gives a better context of how she's decided and where her generalistic view is coming from. And I think it's important to just provide that fair background on where Megan is coming from. So, and kind of another tying up for, we're kind of heading into what I believe about this book, why you should read this book. And like I said, this is a brief response, a brief encouragement for you to go do the reading yourself, and giving you a little bit of actual source from her book. So we've given you her purpose for writing the book, which is to arm evangelicals with the truth of what is going on, and many and kind of big EVA overall, and you, without giving too much about the details of the book, just encourage you to read it for yourself. Don't take the opinions of myself or anyone else. Read it for yourself, and allow God to show you that these things are true. And I think that's what your conclusion will be. So I think there is an obvious problem in evangelicalism. If you look at some of the woke ideologies and see how that's entered seminaries, and in several of the SBC situations with conventions and with presidential issues, all of these things, not to mention a lot of different areas that she addresses. I just encourage you. You can get the book pretty cheaply on Kindle. That's one way, or you can get the actual copy for, I think, $25 on Amazon. Let's see. So here we go. So with why you should read this book, I think this book is important for the reformation of the church in our day. We continually have to be aware that there will be sliding away. That's going to happen with sinners who are justified by grace. We still make mistakes. This is, for many, Megan's not saying that these are not brothers. She's pointing out the problem with their error. So I'm encouraging everybody to please develop your own assessment of the entire book. Read it, and come up with your own assessment of it, and pray for the Christian church in America, the evangelical church in America. Pray for reform, and I pray that, and I do believe that this is the book of the year. That there is a big wake up call. I think the response against it is from many that are addressed, kind of will be validated by their inability to have it completely shut down. I believe Doug Wilson mentioned that if you can't completely stop the production and encourage different publishers to completely stop publishing it, it's going to have the opposite effect, and people will read it. And I believe that Megan's that her arguments are valid, and that we should be considering these things, and to avoid left-leaning ideas and people use their platforms for things that the Bible does not demand of us, and be very careful of these ideas where interpretations of scientific data. One thing is true that science itself never says anything. Scientists are who say these things. So we have to be careful of using government sources. We just have to be discerning in all areas. And I think Megan, she does a perfect job of explaining this as a journalist. And I believe her integrity and her work is wonderful. And I think she's doing a great job of even responding to this. So listen to some of her responses. Allie Beth Stuckey, John Harris. She sat down with these people, Doug Wilson, even Dr. Frank Turek brought her on and talked with Alicia Childers, and look into these things, come up with a fair assessment for yourself, and pray for all of these people. There's no nefarious things going on from Megan. I can't speak for everyone else, but just pray for God to use this work for His glory. And I'll just end with a big question of why this is one of the main purposes to answer this question is why the book was written. And this is into introduction as well. It's titled Wolves, Cowards, Mercenaries, and Fools. The question is, why have so many well-known evangelical institutions and leaders in recent years started promoting causes that no plain reading of Scripture would demand, like lobbying for fossil fuel regulations or dismantling white privilege, while issues that unequivocally call for Christian clarity find them silent and stymied? When the guy who created the children's program VeggieTales starts arguing that evangelicals should take a more nuanced position on abortion, when two successive presidents of the Southern Baptist Convention say the Bible only whispers about sexual sins, something is badly off in mainstream evangelicalism. And I will just end with that. And like I said, an encouragement. to everyone to buy a copy of the book for yourself, pray for the church in America, and continue to pray for Megan, and pray for a true unity, and pray for repentance and change, that we could return to a more biblical worldview on everything. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry for some of the technical difficulties. Again, this is Wayne Griffin, Always Reforming Weekly, on this episode of Always Reforming Response. Have a